Cell to soul. The village of women. I have this reoccurring vision of this small village of women that are all working in this way, this ecosystem in which they are in service to life. Like they are in service to birthing life and in service to revering and tending to life and holding and nourishing one another. I see this way of being with one another that has this sturdiness inside of it. It doesn't have this, oh, shit gets hard, like I bail when shit gets hard, or, you know, oh, there's like a little like mishap and everything collapses. It's like, no, like the roots are so sturdy that it can handle a little tremor. It can handle a little shake because it's not rooted in something so fragile. And I've been thinking about what it is that is needed for that to happen, right? Like what are the conditions? What is vital in order to be able to cultivate that? And inside of that, it comes back to capacity. It comes back to this really deep, earth-anchored holding within oneself, right? Like this capacity to hold one's own chaos, right? When things get chaotic, it's like having that bedrock inside of oneself to be able to contain that chaos. I'm going to be speaking about Cell to Soul weekend, but I'm just doing this in my own roundabout way and offering just like these nuggets that have been resting inside of me. I grew up with the kind of classic energy of women around me running around like chickens with their heads cut off kind of energy, right? Like this like really frantic, frenetic, based out of survival kind of energetic, that didn't have that containment internally of being able to hold, of being able to like really sustain one's own energy. And I inherited a lot of that energy. Yeah, like I inherited a lot of like my own way of being. And it's not like a one and done thing. It's not, oh, I've made it through that and that's it. It's actually given me this template of a practice of me being in sovereignty around how I want to move in the world, the state and the place that I want to move in the world from most of the time. Meaning that life in its inherent chaos is going to bring us situations that are out of our control and that are going to stir us. And all that we really have control over, all that we really have sovereignty and choice inside of, is how we rest inside of ourselves, given whatever set of circumstances life is presenting us with. It is choosing how to care for oneself, choosing how to be in relationship to oneself. And that's what we can anchor into. That is actually something that we can rely on. That's something that we can hold ourselves in. In this kind of energy of like what I actually see end up happening is that there's an idea that if we push harder, if we do more, if we run around with like as a chicken with the head cut off, there might be this capacity to get more done, right? Or it might be we're in a deep fixer kind of energy, right? We're like, okay, we got to do something about it. And actually, the deepest power that we have, and actually what's really required in those moments in which shit gets so like that, is to actually go even slower. Is to actually sit down the part of ourselves that thinks they need to fix, control, tighten, do in order to change things. There's actually this other thing that we need to do that's rooted in truth, which is actually this rooted surrender. This rooted surrender. Feel into that energy. Feel into that state, like this rooted surrender. When I feel into it, there's no abandonment inside of a rooted surrender. Inside of a rooted surrender, there's no losing of oneself in order to surrender and open, because the rootedness is held internally, right? This is an embodied state that we practice, that we cultivate. So what's needed for that? What's needed to cultivate rooted surrender? It's watering. It's replenishing. It's nourishing. It's really being willing to slow down and be with oneself fully. It's being willing to drop into the back body and find the part of us that can actually give to the earth, the part of us that can actually rest and be cradled by the earth, the part of us that can receive the holding of another person, the part of us that can choose internally to find that safety inside of ourselves, because we know that safety could never be given to us. No one can give us the safety or the thing to open. We have to actually cultivate it and water it and choose it internally. And so, what does this have to do with Cell to Soul? Why am I talking about all of this? Because Cell to Soul is really about watering the foundation of our being and widening, resting in the back body of ourselves and giving a really ample amount of spaciousness to practice this way of being that is actually really inherent, that our system actually prefers, actually wants to be in, not just like as a preference, but actually desires to be inside of, and to cultivate and marinate and practice it. And to do so in a little village for a weekend where, no, that's most of us, it's not a reality. Like after the weekend, you go back home and you are likely not in that living in a village of women. But what you receive is actually this template. What you actually receive is this template that you carry inside of yourself, this template that you hold inside of yourself once you're able to cultivate it, once you're able to let yourself practice being inside of it. And so much of the time when women are in that state of chicken with the head cut off energy, right? Which is a lot of what a lot of women have been taught to be inside of. It's interesting because one would think that being in that frequency of woman trying to get everything done and trying to be like frantic and doing everything is like a really active thing. But it's like, I see it as a form of collapse actually. Because you're collapsing into a doingness, thinking that the doingness is going to save you or rescue you or give you this capacity or this ability to then be able to like rest and let go all the way. But actually in that running around with the chicken with the head cut off, you're actually not in the holding of the energy. And so when we're not in the holding of their energy, there's leaks. And that leak is what creates the collapse, which later on like takes one down and down. Ask me how I know. So the alternative is what Cell to Soul is about. The alternative is anchoring oneself into a blueprint, a template of going slow, confrontingly slow, letting yourself receive in a confronting way, letting yourself receive in a way that is really holding yourself as you receive and releasing the grip around the part of you that receives, practicing opening and releasing the parts that like push away that receptivity and like allowing this to open. There's two components, right? There's the part where this is for you, right? Like the weekend is for you. The weekend is for you to be in that cycle of nourishment. When I think of nourishment, and the way that I like to teach about nourishment is that it's like a cycle. There's like a spiral nature inside of nourishment. And what I have found is in the way in which we are giving of ourselves, we are allowing life to feed us at the same time. It's the cycle of nourishment, the spiral of nourishment where, I may be in like a body oiling practice, or I may be, washing my hair or conditioning my hair, or I may be cooking my food, chopping my vegetables. I may be sweeping the house. I may be simply laying my body on the earth. There's something, even in the laying my body on the earth, there's actually something about giving myself over to the earth, consciously choosing to give my weight, because I could be resting on the earth, but I could be holding back from really giving of myself, right? I could actually be gripping and holding my bones tight, right? And sometimes we're in that state, and it takes a little while, right? It takes a little while, but to really release all the weights, but it happens eventually. It really does. And so in this place of giving our weight over to the earth, what are we doing? We're actually like giving of ourselves, but there's no victimization inside of that giving of oneself. It doesn't feel like something is being taken from us in our doing, which is a lot of the times what is happening inside of women in their doing out in the world. Everything feels like a punishment. Everything feels like a chore. Everything feels like it's being done to you. Everything feels like, oh my God, like I just want to throw in the towel, right? And when we get to that place, what often is going on is there is a place in which the place that you started being in relationship to life is closed and not allowing it to feed you in. Something got distorted and imbalanced because you're not allowing life to feed you in the very same breath that you are giving of yourself to life. It's this thing of like it's the energetic state in which we are actually doing things from that changes everything. And the thing is often when I talk about this, or what comes up for women is like, oh, but you don't get it. I do everything. I have to take care of myself. I have to. And there might be grief there. And I get it. And usually what's going on inside of there is that there's like a young part that really didn't receive a kind of holding that was really vital and important developmentally, right? But that young part of us is not the woman inside of us. That young part of us that's like, I don't want to do anything at all. I just want to it all to be taken care of. I don't want to feed life. Like that is usually a little one or a teenage part that is not wanting to be in the responsibility and actually the medicine of being in that feeding of life and receiving from life. And so you might, sometimes when that part is so active and we're really blended with that part, and that part is like really driving us, what can often happen is that anything feels like a punishment to that part. And so at Cell to Soul weekend, we're going to practice something really different. Something really different for this part, where you are actually like baking and basking in the energetic frequency through the physical, like through what we will be doing, like through the density of your body, the physicality of your body, and the rest states that we enter into remembering what it's like to practice receiving. And the kind of like open-heartedness that is actually required to allow nourishment in. Gonna let this land for a moment. It's going to be about feeding the part of you that gets to receive, gets to really honor the pace of your body. I feel like when women come together, there can be like different like levels in which they can play in, like different frequency. And there's a range, right? And we're going to be really playing in the range, or the part of the range that is the low to the ground, the gentle, the spacious. Because inside of that, it'll give room for also like a different kind of connection too. Like we'll definitely be being in conversation, but a lot of the conversation that we'll be having, or inside of that, like it's not going to be a space for you to be on the rides of your story. This is going on in my life. You know how sometimes you can go to women's circles and people are just like on and on and on about like the story. Look, time and place. This ain't that place. This is going to be weaving us back over and over and over again to the embodied experience and the embodied state that that is really present for us. And then there's something too, like we're going to be cooking and like working with herbs, and there's something that actually is so nourishing and deepens us when we are in that place of working with the physical to get that story stuff that just can loop on forever and forever out of the damn way, so that you can actually receive and listen to what is deeper inside of there. And when you are working with the fruits and the medicine of life, of earth, food, right? Plants, working with firewood to start a fire, there's something that actually really nourishes you in such a way where it's like, oh, it just zaps that part that so wants to be in the intoxication of its own egoic story and this and that and personality. And look, we all have this. I have this too. It's, that just kind of and then we drop in a layer deeper, and then we drop in a layer deeper, and we drop in a layer deeper. And really, actually, so much of what gets us into that intoxication of our egoic ride and our story, and we go to these women's circles and we just want to talk about all the shit, like what actually ends up happening is like that's just excess energy, and it actually just wants to be metabolized. And the way that it is metabolized, it's actually can be through resting, like literally just laying down and doing nothing and like letting the earth hold you. And it can also be like through you like working with the earth, working with food, working in a craft-like way that moves it. It actually doesn't need to be munching and blah on that intoxicated ride. And I have had the honor of being in like really beautiful spaces where people, where people are like really tapped into this, and it's like medicine. What happens? It's like salt of the earth kind of nourishment, like a really deep salt of the earth nourishment. And you feel like the web of life, you feel the web of connectivity from this different place where it's like, oh, we don't need to talk about all these things in order to feel connected. We actually can just like be in silence. We can actually just be in this simplicity and receive so much from it. And it's a practice. And that is what Cell to Soul is inviting you to. So let's talk about it. Cell to Soul weekend, the Village of Woman, is really about subtle body restoration and rhythmic rejuvenation. So subtle body restoration, restoring the subtle body, but really restoring all the body, like the physical, energetic, spiritual, but like the subtle body is what opens in a really quiet space. And it's so vital to tap into when we are talking about really nourishing at a deep, deep level. The physical will inherently happen too, that restoration, because of how we will be working with like really gentle opening embodiment practices, breath, and connection to the earth and connection to each other's bodies. Rhythmic rejuvenation is really about this way of honoring the cycles of our bodies around like how we are in connection to the sun and to the earth, like how we are in connection to rising with the sun, getting the sun in our eyes, like sleeping like on the proper time, like getting the meals and our blood sugar balance, and like really being in this place of rejuvenating ourselves in a rhythmic way, which is connected to the intelligence, of like how we are actually made to be in connection to the earth. And this is just like a no-brainer. We have so much illness in the world that we live in because people are really tapped out of rhythmic rejuvenation, and there's a lot of reasons for it. And you know, the retreat will also be phone free. Like there will not be scrolling time or anything like that. Like you can use your phone in case of an emergency, but it's like, no, you put the phone away, you know. We're not going to be on screens. Like we're going to be really like salt of the earth in actual connection. What's another component of the rhythmic? The blood sugar balance. So like this piece around how we eat and how we make sure that we're like in balance with what we are eating. We will be eating meat, and we will be cooking meat, and I will be like teaching some of my best recipes, which is really exciting. I like this is one of my core loves. Like this is actually how I started my working for nonprofits and teaching children and elders how to cook, and it's so sweet to be bringing this back. And, you know, we're going to take note of like where everyone is on their cycle and really, really honor that. Like, really honor where people are on their cycles, or like if someone comes and like their cycle is past, you know, like menopause, like honoring that, like really honoring this component, honoring the fall, honoring the season, because we're going to be in the fall then. And I'm gonna be teaching, like it's kind of like this energy of like going to someone's kitchen, going to someone's home, and like being taken care of, but then also being in reciprocity. So as I'm teaching and guiding, it's like we're gonna be working together, and then we're gonna like cook together, and we're gonna like be helping each other out and be in this state, and it's gonna be so beautiful. It's going to be so beautiful. And I have this gorgeous home and backyard, and we are going to be spending time at the springs and swimming. And yeah, sleeping on the land is going to be a big part of it. Restoring ourselves through sleeping on the land. So this is Soul to Soul Weekend. This is your invitation. If you have any questions, if you are like, oh, I'm so ready to come, send me a message or apply. Website, carlapalomino.com/Cell2Soul-weekend, and fill out a little form. And I am so excited to have you. I'm so excited to host you. Just gonna close us.